My name is Tamás Iván Kovács. I'm the Ambassador of Hungary to Belgium and Luxembourg. And I am a Hungarian lawyer, diplomat, who did also political science. And that's why I liked your project on Instagram and on some of the other platforms. And I was very happy to be available for you today.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for welcoming me here to the Hungarian Embassy in Brussels. To start, could you explain to us what the role of an ambassador actually is?
Sure. An ambassador is a diplomatic envoy, one of the oldest professions in the world. Someone who, at the highest level of diplomatic relations, is accredited from a head of state to a head of state. So my accreditation letters were signed by the President of Republic of Hungary, and I have given them to the head of state of the Kingdom of Belgium and the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. So in Belgium it was the King, King of the Belgians, and in Luxembourg it was the Grand Duke of Luxembourg when I arrived. An ambassador is basically a diplomatic emissary who is keeping the contact at all possible levels between the two countries, whether it's between official governments or people-to-people relationship and all kinds of diplomacy that we can think of, whether it's economic, political, sports diplomacy, higher education, science, culture, technology. In all possible ways, an ambassador is there to enhance the relations between the countries that he is accredited to.
What are the main responsibilities of an embassy?
An embassy has various responsibilities, not only one, obviously, and it's not only political. A Hungarian embassy has functions that are very similar to other diplomatic services of European countries. Again, as I mentioned, it's one of the oldest professions in the world, and first and foremost is there to have the highest level of political contacts between the two countries that the ambassador is working into. In my case, it's actually 3 countries. I'm accredited to Belgium and to Luxembourg, so I'm responsible for the Hungarian-Belgian, Hungarian-Luxembourgish relations. But as you know, being Belgium is a very complicated country. It is a unique federal country, and Hungary is one of the few countries in Europe or in the world which has the highest level of political contacts, not only with the federal administration in Belgium, but also with some of the federated entities. Hungary has the highest level of government relations with Flanders since 1994, with Wallonia since 1995, and with the German-speaking community since 2002. But of course, we also have relations with the Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles, but also the Brussels region. So we are there first and foremost to keep these political contacts open between the various levels of governments. Second, we are responsible for all kinds of economic relations. Hungary and Belgium are 2 countries that trade a lot between themselves. Annually, it's about 7 billion euros that the two countries are exchanging goods and services. For example, the largest foreign-owned bank in Hungary is KBC, which is the largest Belgian bank. And we have a pharmaceutical giant called Gedeon Richter, which is market leader in some of the women's health products in Belgium. But from here, from the giants really to the small and medium-sized enterprises, there are a lot of companies who are giving employment to Belgian companies giving employment to Hungarians, some Hungarian companies giving employment to Belgians. And in all the economic metrics, Belgium is number 11s, number 12s in our economic order in terms of the importance of the countries that we are dealing with, and even with much bigger numbers, because Belgium has a bigger GDP and a higher export-import figures, we are about the 24th, 25th. So it's actually quite significant because that gives livelihood, that keeps families employed, and it's very important, and this is how we get to know each other's countries. But an embassy is also there to be sort of the official place for its citizens. We have a consulate, and the consulate is there to service all the Hungarian citizens who either live on a permanent basis here in Belgium, working maybe for the European Commission or NATO, or have arrived with the Kindertrein between the two world wars, or their descendants, or 1956 revolution refugees, and they establish their lives here. It is the consulate's job to provide them with the IDs, the passports, but all kinds of consular help that they might need. But it's not only for people who are here on a permanent basis, but also people who are traveling to Belgium, and whether it's the truck driver or who passes through, or the tourists, or the student who comes for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, depending on the need. The consulate is there to provide all the available state services of Hungary to them. I would say that these are the 3 most important duties that an embassy has: political contacts, economic contacts, and consular services to the citizens. But we are responsible for many other things. We have a fantastic cultural institute, which has a very rich programming, and at least 2 or 3 times a week around the year, you can see Hungarian theater, Hungarian dance, Hungarian classical music, jazz or modern music. You can marvel at Hungarian design or fashion. There are all kinds of cultural performances that our Cultural Institute offers. And we have, of course, a military attaché who keeps the contact between the various militaries if they do a common acquisition on a program. Of course, Hungary and Belgium and Hungary and Luxembourg are all countries who are very closely allied. We belong to the same multinational organizations, not only multilateral organizations, not only the UN, but also what is much, much closer is the EU and also NATO. So in all possible aspects, an embassy, the ambassador, and his or her colleagues are there to cover all these duties around the year. But it's really around the year. It's a job that you do basically 365 days a year, because, for example, there is a consular duty that we have, that if a Hungarian citizen gets into trouble or loses his or her passport and would like to travel home, that we provide that service to him or her.
You are the ambassador of Hungary to Belgium, but Brussels is also the heart of Europe. Does this make your role different compared to being an ambassador in an other country?
That's a very good question, and it's absolutely yes is the answer, because well, first of all, I would say that, of course, all ambassadors, if you talk to a Hungarian ambassador in Riga or Athens or Lisbon, sorry, would probably say that that's the most important job in the world. And of course, every ambassador is somewhat biased vis-a-vis the country that she or he is sent to. But it's true that Brussels, being the diplomatic capital of the world, that's the place where the most diplomatic representations are present. If you take only bilateral embassies, which are embassies just like ours to Belgium and Luxembourg, there are about 189, I think, currently. But if you count also the EU permanent representations and NATO permanent representations, there are more than 300 diplomatic representations in Brussels. And of course, coming from an EU and NATO country accredited to 2 other EU and NATO countries, it is impossible to talk about only Hungarian-Belgian or Hungarian-Flemish, Walloon or German-speaking Belgian relations without talking about EU and NATO and security-related issues. So being a bilateral ambassador in Brussels means also that it's an operational place, this city, which has a cacophony of voices, and it's a very diverse, very busy town where you really exchange ideas and interact with the representatives of almost all governments around the world. So that's why I would say Brussels is more important than many other diplomatic positions.
You have had a long diplomatic career. What led you to choose diplomacy as a profession?
To be honest, I am a lawyer who left the profession. I started mainly being interested in public affairs, but my life took a turn and I studied in the US in the early 90s. I always thought that it's much easier to go from private to public than from public to private employment, and I wanted to try myself out what it could be to work as an attorney, work as a lawyer. And I did a law school in Hungary and also in the United States, and I did the bar exam both in Budapest and also in the United States of America, specifically in New York State. And I started my career as an attorney, so working in the private sector. But then I felt that I'm missing that element of public service that I was looking for. In the last 26 years now, I spent in public service, either working for the Hungarian government as a civil servant or for the European Union. I think in every person's life, it's a constant evolution. And while I was very happy being an attorney and being able to work with high quality colleagues, being able to solve legal mysteries and coming up with good solution for the clients, I was always tempted to rejoin the intellectual curiosity that I enjoyed when I was at law school and when I was really interested in representing, a bigger entity than just the economic entrepreneurs or the companies who are giving the law firm these mandates or jobs. And being a lawyer is being a representative of a client. Being an ambassador is being a representative of an entire country, an entire people to another people. So it was sort of the natural next step from that private sector job to being in diplomacy. And if I'm fully honest with myself, I think that's really my life's calling. I found that the most satisfying endeavor that I was ever associated with. When you're an attorney and you're working for different clients, of course, you are assisting and helping, which is a very important job. At the same time, if you're a diplomat, then it's an intellectually challenging job, stimulating job, to come up with the right arguments for representing your country, getting to know the country that you're operating in, and try to find the common points between those people, those sports clubs, between those universities, between those companies. And it's a multifaceted, very interesting and very diverse job.
What qualities are essential to become a good diplomat?
Again, I'm 54 years old, so what I'm going to tell you is, of course, is littered with my own prejudices that, by middle age, someone develops, and that must be different when you're 19 or just starting university. One thing is for certain, if you're an introvert, then this job is not for you. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, take some risks. You are putting your own individual personality also with the job, and that's what makes it interesting. Because, of course, this is a job that you can study for. There are in all the Belgian universities as well international relations degrees and diplomatic studies, which one obviously needs to do in order to become a good diplomat. You learn the rules of the trade, the customs, the way how that operates. But there's a little bit of art behind all of that, and it's really something that you would need to fall in love with a little bit, and being able to have the ability to relate to any life situation, any social situation that you get into. One day you're interacting with the head of state and you're attending the New Year's reception of the King, His Majesty, the King of the Belgians. The other day you are escorting a Hungarian football team who is playing with the Belgian football team, or a youth women's team, to say the difference. Then you are at a performance of a Hungarian ballet at one of the premier cultural institutions of Belgium. And you can do that, these things within a day, where you sometimes have to engage and have meaningful conversations with all participants who are part of that program. Sometimes you have to make speeches, sometimes you have to write reports. So it's a very interesting and very diverse job that gives almost immediate satisfaction, because a good cultural program or a useful visit of a Hungarian leader with a Belgian leader, or an economic deal or a business deal that a Belgian and a Hungarian company struck, is something that you immediately feel your impact. And I think in any job or any profession that you're looking for is what you can add to that activity that is required from you. And certainly diplomacy is something that gives you that, and you have to be able to relate to all of these different life situations, and you have to be able to interact and keep the interest and the channels open with all of the people that you're interacting with.
How would you describe the relationship between Belgium and Hungary today?
Excellent. And of course, I'm biased because it's also my work. So if I would say that they are not good, then I would say something bad about my work. But in all seriousness, it's probably the best that it has ever been. First of all, it's a relationship that goes back to centuries and well predates Belgium's existence. We have very important dynastic relations, starting with the very famous Omegang, where you see Marie d'Hongrie, Maria von Hongarije. There was just recently a very good exhibition at the Marimont Museum on Hungarian Renaissance, and the Marie d'Hongrie, who was ruling Hungary as well, and whose flag is flying at this medieval procession Omegang. But then going through the Kindertrend generation, or 1956, there are a lot of historical, dynastic, people-to-people relations that you can build on. And adding to this, all of the things that I mentioned about political context, economic context, sports-related context, scientific cooperation, university-to-university relationship, all add a very interesting, exciting facet to this relationship. We are members of the same very important and very closely working integrative organizations like the EU and and NATO. We are part of the Visegrad 4 countries, while Belgium is part of the Benelux. The two country groupings are working also very closely together. So our relationship is excellent, and that's true for our leaders, but that's true for our populations as well.
What are the main areas of cooperation?
All the different areas that I mentioned. I would say the most important is our shared European construction that we are building within the European Union, and also the public security, national security considerations that go into our work when it comes to NATO. But all of the things that I mentioned are important. And the last few years, we have been living some of the most interesting years of our bilateral relationship, because we were celebrating the diplomatic centennial between the two countries. Belgium came to existence 1830-31. Hungary is one of the oldest countries in Europe. It was established in the year 1000, so we have more than 1,000 years of history. Obviously, our relations predate Belgium's existence, but still, when Belgium came to existence, it had diplomatic relationship what was called the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. And then after the First World War peace treaty system, Versailles, the new, much smaller but independent Hungary re-entered into those diplomatic relations. And it was in 1922 when the first Hungarian envoy of the free and independent Hungary arrived in Belgium. Hence, in 2022 and 23, we were celebrating the diplomatic centennial with a whole series of cultural and scientific and political series of events. We had a visit of our President of the Republic in 2023. We were part of the same EU presidency trio between 23 and 24, when for the second time Spain, Belgium and Hungary together gave the EU presidency trio. And in 24, it was first half was Belgium, second half was Hungary, and we had basically all of the Hungarian governmental leaders coming to Belgium for this EU presidency event. And in the second half, it was the Hungarian reception of these Belgian governmental leaders happened in Hungary.
Hungary has often had a specific position within the European Union. How would you describe the Hungarian vision of Europe?
I think that vision is shared with a lot of other countries around Europe. We see great many advantages of European cooperation, and it's a fantastic peace project. I mean, before on our continent, whether it's between the French or the Germans, or in our neck of the wood between Hungary and its neighbors, the relationship were often hostile. They often included wars, which now unimaginable between these countries. It's one of the most successful peace projects. Schengen, the common use of a similar or the same currency, all add various layers to this cooperation that makes it impossible to think of what was happening in the very tortured history of the 20th century. At the same time, Hungarians are proud people, and they have 1,000 years of their own history. And that means that most Hungarians are very pro-European, but at the same time, they would not like to see a United States of Europe. It's not a federation or a federative enterprise that they would like to be part of. They would like to exercise their sovereignty together with other countries and deepening their cooperation where it's good for Europe and good for the individual participating countries. At the same time, it should not be a centrally run federation where an imperial center will tell you what to do in the individual countries. All of these countries, including Hungary, has a proud culture, a constitutional tradition, in our case a very special language, that all contributes to what makes up Europe. And Hungarians, in that sense, would like to see that cooperation based on very strong nation states, but very strongly cooperating together.
Hungary is currently entering a new political period with the arrival of Prime Minister Péter Magyar after many years under Viktor Orbán's period. From your perspective as a diplomat representing Hungary, How do you approach this new political chapter?
That's a very good question, and that highlights the difference between diplomats and politicians. Diplomats are there to represent not only their governments but their countries, and sometimes these relationships or that work is overshadowed by a set of war noises that you see sometimes on a European level. When it comes to bilateral diplomacy, diplomacy between Hungary and Belgium, 95% of what we do are never really called into question, and they are never controversial. When we are helping consular clients of each other, when we are organizing scientific conferences, when we are trying to make economic deals between the companies of Belgium and the companies of Hungary. These are all issues that both sides of the negotiating table win. It's a win-win situation. So in that sense, being a diplomat is much less influenced necessarily by the change of government. That doesn't mean that people, and especially heads of mission, wouldn't change. Change is sometimes good, and the head of mission always need to have the full trust of the government who sends him or her. But at the same time, the diplomats who are working at embassies are professional diplomats. They studied long years to arrive at the place where they are at, and they would represent changing governments because they are representing basically their own countries and not just the governments only. With our recent election, it's very important to state that we as Hungarians are very proud of our record. I was 18 years old during the system change in 1990 when the first free election took place after 40 years of horrible communist era that was very alien to most of the Central and Eastern European countries. Certainly Czechia, Slovakia, Poland and Hungary, the Visegrad four countries were always part of Europe, were always part of Mitteleuropa, Central Europe, and to most of these countries, to all of these countries, communism was a weird and aberrant idea. And in 1990 we had the first free elections, and this was the 10th election since that. So it's a lot of years have passed, 36 years since 1990, and I'm very proud that all Hungarian elections were uncontested in a sense that they were really working very fairly and very openly, and everybody accepted the results. There was always a government emerging after the election results, a government that never had to go on a premature election, always failed the full 4-year term of their governmental mandate, governmental cycle, and it was a success. It's also a success because in Hungary, in the most recent elections, 80%, more than 80% of the people went to the polls. We don't have mandatory voting like in Belgium, and 80% participation in an otherwise completely voluntary election. It's an enormously impressive result, which produced a very clear result in a government that ended up being headed by Péter Magyar with a very strong mandate in the Hungarian parliament. They won about 53% of the votes, but our system always helps the winner. And with those rules, they have more than 74% of the parliamentary seats, 141 out of 199. And the previous governmental parties, which were in power for 16 years before, Fidesz and the Christian Democrats, are now in opposition, along with the third party that qualified, because there's also a 5% minimum limit that you need to achieve in order to get into the parliament.
Does the role of an ambassador change when a country experiences a major political period?
It could. In my case, actually, I'm finishing up 8 years of very exciting and very fruitful period of serving as an ambassador. That is already somewhat unusual. Ambassadors are usually there, depending on the system, for 3, 4, 5 years sent to a country. In our system, it's usually 4 or 5 years. I was asked to stay, and I do this job for quite a long time because, as I mentioned, a lot of interesting things happened at the same time. We had the bilateral diplomatic centennial with Belgium and also with Luxembourg. We had 2 Visegrad 4 presidencies in 21-22 and in 25-26. We just completed at the end of June our second during my term. And of course, what is an even rarer occurrence is the EU presidency, which together with Belgium, we shared 1 year together, 2024. So that's why it was a very long process. But as you might know, I was in Brussels before. I worked for the European Commission. And it's a very Brussels type story that a lot of people who came to this city will stay and do different jobs in the system because of family reasons, because of professional reasons, and that's going to be my case as well.
The new government has expressed its willingness to renew dialogues with European partners. Should we expect a new dynamic between Budapest and Brussels? And which European topics will be priorities for the new government?
There's already a new dynamic because that government took office on the 9th of May and now we are in mid-July. So it's already happening, and it's very clear that the new government changed some of its stances vis-à-vis the old one when it came to European cooperation. That doesn't mean that European cooperation wasn't existing before the previous government, but the current government holds more mainstream views when it comes to European questions, and it is also can be seen by the European party affiliations of the various governments in power. The current government main party, well, the one party, TISA, is a member of the European People's Party, which is in government, so to say, the largest and the strongest party in the European Parliament and in the European cooperation. And the new government is keen on renewing or making closer our relationship to the European Union and also within NATO. Some of the changes included different stances when it comes to the issues of enlargement of Ukraine. Some other issues concern different economic cooperation. I would say one of the most important questions for the future will be under already the Irish EU presidency, the multi-annual financial framework, the next 7-year budget of the European Union, and how Europe, in the form of the European Union, can respond to some of the questions that all Europeans will face. Is the relative loss of European industry and its competitiveness vis-à-vis its competitors or partners in the world, the US, China, and many others. Also, the fact that today the international system is in turmoil. There are a lot of conflicts, armed conflicts and wars, also in Europe's neighborhood. In fact, Ukraine and Russia and the illegal Russian attack on Ukraine is happening to a country which is bordering Hungary, and we feel all of those effects. But I could go on and on from climate change to the future of energy and Europe's place in the world that will have to be determined by action if we would like to achieve serious results.
Is there a diplomatic challenge that Hungary is facing today?
There's always a diplomatic challenge for a country that's 1,000-year-old. One of our previous prime ministers said that the job of a diplomat or a statesman is always, or whoever who deals with public affairs, that if you look at the European map, there is the Carpathian Basin, and there are the Hungarians who occupy a large part of it, and that's where Hungarian, this very rare non-Indo-European Finno-Ugric language is spoken, with a very special culture, with all its very special traits. And the goal of people who are working for the country, working for the state, whether they are politicians or civil servants, within that diplomats, is that Hungarian will be spoken and the culture will exist 1,000 years from now. People who are long descended from our generations when we are not around. And that continuity is the main challenge of any diplomat, to be able to be flexible enough and to find the best partnership, the best alliances for your country that will ensure survival of the country and its citizens, and the prosperity and the maintenance of that culture in that very particular part of the world.
Looking ahead, what role would you like Hungary to play in Europe over the next decade?
For better or worse, Hungary has played a very important role because its opinion was, of course, putting a mark on the European cooperation. And as someone who is in the diplomatic business, would like to see that Hungary's word will still matter and will take into serious consideration. Sometimes we usually say that we are the 11th largest country of the European Union. We are obviously a mid-sized country with about 10 million people and additional millions when it comes to Hungarians, ethnic Hungarians living in Europe, with a very special culture, but we don't have large armies, we don't have humongous economic performances, but we have a lot to offer to this world. I sometimes talk about, when it comes to Hungarian culture, the fact how many Nobel Prize winners we have per capita in the world, how many Summer Olympic gold medals we have in the world, how many famous photographers or filmmakers we had. And if you look at that, Hungarians have contributed a lot to European culture and also to world culture, and I would like to see that continuing to flourish in the years to come.
Last question. What do you think about Belgium and politics?
Belgium is a very complicated country. It's a very unique federal structure that even diplomats have sometimes difficulties to figure it out. I think it's a beautiful place. Anybody who is interested in politics, and this is what I told my friends after having studied political science in Hungary, the country that has so many governments and so many different parliaments can only be a fantastic place, because you learn a lot about this activity in making. And with some odd gaps in between, next year I will be about 20 years following Belgian domestic politics and Belgium's place in the world. And I must say that it continues to amaze me, and of course it's a wonderful place that gives the origins of the Belgian Compromise, that very much also governs the way how Europe works, where a multi-ethnic, multi-lingual community in a determined geographical place have to live together in peace, and would have to find the best solutions for himself or herself. Sometimes it is difficult for diplomats, because they are professionals who are sent from their own country to represent the country that they are coming from. But I often saw, and that's certainly true for me, that the country where they are accredited to have an effect on them. And I'm honest about the fact. I raised a family or grew a family here. My kids grew up here. I like Belgium very much with all its quirkiness and all its realism. This is a wonderful place to live, and of course, if you're a student of not only political science but history, you see that this is a country at the border of Neo-Latin and Germanic culture, surrounded by sometimes much bigger countries, Germany and France, or even the Netherlands, which means that it also has a very dynamic, constant adaptation to everything that's happening in and around the world. And this is one of the best places in the world to live, I think.